share it on your timeline. Whatever you do, we just need you to share it. All right? Now, before we get into it, I want to ask that you would please join me in a word of prayer. Our God and Father, we thank you so much for blessing us to see another Sunday. We thank you for how good and great you have been. We thank you for your love, your kindness, your grace, your mercy. We thank you for how good you've been to all of us. We thank you, Lord, for yet another Father's Day. We thank you for all of the fathers, the men in our lives who have mentored us, who have helped us, who have strengthened us, who have blessed us, who continue to do so. We thank you for fathers who are no longer here but did the best they could while they were here. We thank you for fathers who in the absence of other fathers, they have stood up and become fathers to children who were not even born from them. And so, Father, we ask that you would bless us as we work our way through your word. Teach us and train us in your mighty Son, Jesus' name. We ask it all and we pray. And everyone said together, amen. Listen, we are so excited that you decided to join with us this morning. And so we're going to take a few moments, and I want to think from this thought, the heart of a father. The heart of a father. And so what we're going to do is we're going to dive back into a passage that we looked at maybe about a month or so ago, which is Luke chapter 15. Now, we looked at this as we talked about the coronavirus, and this was a part of our coronavirus series, and we're going to revisit this whole passage today, but we're going to do it from the standpoint of a different eye of perspective. Last time we looked at it from the perspective of the coronavirus and how we needed to reevaluate how we think about and how we do church. But this time, I want to take another look at it from the standpoint of understanding to a greater degree the heart of the Father and how the heart of the Father, the heart of God, how that relates or should relate to the hearts of us as men as we are fathers. And so we're going to take our time and kind of walk through this just a little bit. And so if you will, join with me on your handout, Luke chapter 15. And what we'll do is we'll read through the whole chapter, and then we'll come back and start highlighting several things as we walk our way through it. All right? So let's get ready. Luke chapter 15, starting at verse 1, says this. Now all the tax collectors and the sinners were coming near him to listen to him. Both the Pharisees and the scribes began to grumble, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable, saying, "What man among you, if he has 100 sheep and has lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open pasture and go after the one which is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost.' I tell you that in the same way, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance." Verse 8. Or what woman, if she has 10 silver coins and loses one coin, does not light a lamp and sweep the house and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin which I had lost." In the same way, I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Verse 11. And he said, "A man had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the estate that falls to me.' So he divided his wealth between them. And not many days later, the younger son gathered everything together and went on a journey into a distant country. And there he squandered his estate with loose living. Now, when he had spent everything, a severe famine occurred in that country, and he began to be impoverished. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, and he sent him into his field to feed swine. And he would have gladly filled his stomach with the pods that the swine were eating, and no one was giving anything to him. But when he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired men have more than enough bread, but I am dying here with hunger? I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me as one of your hired men.' So he got up and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion for him, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. And bring the fattened calf, kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.' And they began to celebrate. Now, his older son was in the field. And when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. And he summoned one of the saints and began inquiring what these things should be. And he said to him, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has received him back safe and sound.' Verse 28. But he became angry and was not willing to go in, and his father came out and began pleading with him. But he answered and said to his father, 'Look, for so many years I have been serving you, and I have never neglected a command of yours. And yet you have never given me a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your wealth with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' And he said to him, 'Son, you have always been with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, for this brother of yours was dead and has begun to live, and was lost and has been found.'" All right, there we have it. So if you recall, we read this about a month or so ago, and we just read the whole thing in its entirety for us today. So as we go through it, a couple of things that I want to point out. Now, once again, when we started this, and I explained it again a while ago, and some things I'll explain, and there's a lot I'm going to leave off, but some things I'll explain at this point. So once again, Jesus is being confronted with scribes and Pharisees, and they're having an issue about the fact that there are people who are coming to see Jesus and who want to hear him, and he's giving attention to them, but the people he's giving attention to are not the religious people. They're not the in crowd. And so the religious people are having a problem with Jesus spending so much time with non-religious people. And we'll talk about that more in details. So essentially what Jesus does is he begins to tell a story. And what he's doing is he's telling a parable. And it's interesting because when you read it, the Bible says he began to tell them this parable. And so he's telling one parable, but he tells it in three different stories. And so when you read that, what you have to understand is that what Jesus is doing is he is making the same point in each particular story, because it all feeds into one parable. All right, and so just a couple of things that we understand about it is that when you look at each one of the stories, right? Because the question is, why is he telling this in three different ways? Because ultimately, the context of all of this is the context of salvation. Okay, that's the context. That's the immediate context, is the context of salvation. Now, I'm not going to come from that immediate context at this for this message. What I'm looking at are what the story reveals, or how, because in Jesus telling this story, what he's also doing is he's addressing a particular context, but in addressing the context, he's also revealing the heart of God in three different ways. Right? So he gives us a multifaceted look or view into the heart of God. And what I'm suggesting is, as Jesus is revealing the heart of God, likewise, as he reveals it, it should be some resonance with the heart of us men as fathers, because Jesus is revealing the heart of the Father. And so as he goes through it, he tells, he kind of goes through these three stories. And what you begin to see are he's making one parable in three stories, and then there's three constant points that are made, and the points are always changing. And so, for instance, what we learn is that there are degrees of importance that are revealed in each story, right? Degrees of importance. How do you figure that? Because the sheep was 1 out of 100. Right? So now you're talking 1% value. The coin was 1 out of 10, so you're talking a 10% value. But then the son was 1 out of 2, so you're talking a 50% value. So what you're seeing is the revelation of God's heart in terms of greater depths of value and how God responds to it. One of the things we learn is that the shepherd, when the sheep was lost, the shepherd displayed concern and then tenderness when he found the sheep. That was his emotional response. When the woman lost and then found the coin, she displays earnestness to find it and then joy when she finds it. When the son was lost, the father displays compassion when he sees his son, and he displays celebration when his son comes back and he finds out, he's back, right? And so you see those different things. A couple other comparisons is that we notice is that the sheep, listen carefully, the sheep was lost on accident, and so the sheep didn't really know it was lost. The coin, the sheep was lost on accident. And here's the key. The sheep knew it was lost, right? Because sheep have conscience. So the sheep but it was lost on accident, and the sheep knew it was lost. The coin, on the other hand, because it doesn't have conscience, was lost, but it didn't know it was lost, right? And in fact, we talked about this last time, the coin was lost in the house, right? The sheep was lost out of the house. The coin was lost in the house. So it doesn't matter the proximity to the owner, you can still be lost. That's a cold piece. And so then we learn about the son in the third story, that the son actually wanted to be lost, which is crazy. And so when we begin to see when we begin to see the response of the shepherd, the response of the woman, and the response of the father, each one of these three people reveals something about the heart of God when you see them in these scenarios. And so we want to begin to kind of take a look at how does God's heart react or respond, and how should that translate to how our hearts should act or respond as fathers. Now, here we go. So in Luke chapter 1, and again, I want to remind you, Luke 15, verse 1, it starts here. Notice, it says this: now the tax collectors and sinners, right? Tax collectors and sinners. Underline tax collectors and sinners. It says, now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear him. Both Pharisees and scribes began to grumble, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." There's their criticism of Jesus. They're criticizing Jesus' actions, not knowing that they're criticizing his heart, not knowing that his heart was the heart of the Father. And so, what do you see in the first verse? It says, "Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear him." So Jesus was giving special attention, listen carefully, to outsiders. He was giving special attention to people who were not a part of the mainstream of Jewish life. He was giving special attention to people who were not like them. He was giving special attention to his perceived enemies. He was giving specialized attention to the uninvited to the party. Because scribes and Pharisees were seen as outsiders. Tax collectors and sinners were seen as outsiders. They were despised. They were rejected. They were seen as a lower class of people by the Jewish scribes and Pharisees. And because of that, them, not only them, but also the Samaritans, right, which was a whole other racial issue that was going on at the time. And Jesus deals with that in detail. But here you have, and we find Jesus giving attention to people who are not like us. People who are not within the mainstream, people who are not, who we consider enemies, people who are uninvited to things that we have set up and things that we would normally do. And they were upset that Jesus was actually giving attention to people who they didn't feel mattered as much as themselves. That's really kind of what was going on or happening. And so in the first three stories, you have three things. You have a lost sheep, you have a lost coin, and then you have a lost son. And what we discover is that whenever the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son is found, you have this tremendous amount of excitement, joy, and celebration on behalf of the shepherd, the woman, and the father. Meaning that especially if we understand that the shepherd, the woman, and the father are all representative in this parable of God himself, what we find is that God is excited when lost people are included. And so watch this. Number one on your handout, I want you to write this down. Lost things matter to God. Let that sink in. Lost things, listen, matter to God. And then underneath that, God has no problem, watch this, God has no problem giving priority to that which is lost. Let that sink in. God has no problem giving priority to that which is lost. See, and what each one of these stories is telling us is this. Number two, when we lose something, right? When we lose something, not just personally, but also from the standpoint of a society. Here's what you have to understand. When you're reading scripture, you're reading an Eastern book written by Easterners to Easterners. And so most of us, because we're Westerners, we tend to personalize everything. And we tend to make some of these lessons personal to us. Like, what should I do? How does this apply to me? And a lot of times we forget we're a part of a larger society, and it's often the larger society that Jesus is actually speaking to. Notice in this story, he's talking to, you have tax collectors and sinners, groups of people who are coming to hear him. Not only are these groups of people, these are classes of people. Then you have scribes and Pharisees. These are not only groups of people, these are classes of Jews who are complaining against what Jesus is doing. And so you have one class or group of people who's complaining about the actions of Jesus and the action he's taking toward another group or class of people. And so listen, when we lose something, not just personally, but when we lose something as a society, when we lose something as a culture, when something is lost, we should prioritize finding it. Why? Because it matters. It matters. It matters to God, and it should matter to us. Right? It matters. It matters to God, and it should matter to us. One of the things that I am super tired of arguing and fussing about is this whole issue of Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. Right? Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. So sick, so tired of hearing that conversation and debate. Why? Because, and I get it, right? You got all type of Christians, oh, you shouldn't say Black Lives Matter. Oh, that's exclusive. Oh, you're just focusing on one person. Oh, sounds like you're saying everybody's life doesn't matter. Listen, that is not what that means. Saying that Black Lives Matter does not mean that everybody's life doesn't matter. Back to the text. Back to the text. One sheep was lost. One sheep had a problem. One sheep was by themselves. One sheep was out there lonely and ready to be preyed on by the enemy. One sheep. 99 were safe. And what did the shepherd do? The shepherd went and found the one sheep. The shepherd, listen, the shepherd left the 99 at home and took a journey, a specialized journey, to go get the one sheep. Why? Because one sheep's life matters. It matters to the shepherd. When the woman lost the coin, she wasn't concerned about the other 9 coins because she had those. Those were okay. Those were safe. She knew where those were. It was the one coin that was missing that troubled her to no end. And why did she tear up the house and make a shambles of things trying to find the one coin? Because one coin matters. And when the father had lost his son and the son had came back, why did he bust out in a big celebration? Why? And then the other son starts complaining, right? He's complaining. And he's like, well, you never did this for me, right? Because the father is saying, my younger son life matters. The older son is saying, yeah, but all life matters. And the father has to correct the older son. See, here's the key. A heart of a good father. What does all of this have to do with fatherhood? I'm so glad you asked. Because listen, the heart of a good father, and I'm talking a good father, the heart of a good father is willing to give specialized, individualized attention to one over another when needed. That's the heart of a good father. Any father listening to me, and if you have more than one kid, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because oftentimes, when you have multiple kids in a family, and it's amazing how it happens, right? You'll have a kid, and this kid grows up, and they're pretty simple, they're easy, they never give you any problems, right? They pretty much do what you say, that kind of thing. But this one over here, oh my God, this is the demon child, right? and it's weird because you recognize quickly you cannot parent each child the same. Right? You have to give special individualized attention and sometimes even more attention to this one because this child's life is in danger if you don't hold them fast to yourself. This one, you can kind of let them do their own thing and they're going to be okay. But this one is a little bit more difficult. And here's what the text reveals. The text reveals that there's nothing wrong with a father giving special individualized attention to a child that absolutely needs it. And because, listen, and it never diminishes the father's love for all of his children. Why? Because all of his children matter to a good father, but a father is wise enough to give specialized attention when attention is needed. And when we start looking at our culture and our society, I can't help, like I was reading this not just the other day, where it talks about how if we look at our culture and society, listen to me, African Americans and African American boys, African American children, African American families, listen, we're lost. We're in trouble. We are absolutely in trouble. I read this the other day. Three out of 4 African American boys in California failed to meet the reading and writing standards of the most recent round of testing, according to data obtained from the State Department of Education and analyzed by Cal Matters. Right? More than half of black boys scored in the lowest category in the English portion of the test, trailing their female counterparts. The disparity reflects a stubbornly persistent gender gap in reading and writing scores that stretch across ethnic groups. Did you get that? And I have all other kind of stats. I won't jump into it right now, but I have all other kinds of statistics that I could literally read to you. And once you finish reading them, you have to understand, we have to understand from a cultural standpoint that the black family structure, black children, listen to me, we are lost. We are in trouble. And so, and when we look at this from a father, right, from a father's heart, from a Father's Day perspective, here's a twofold thing that we have to grapple with. Number one, I believe that when God sees us in this condition, that God's heart is moved toward compassion for the black family and black children. Number 2, what I also believe is that we as black men and as black fathers, we've got to figure out, how do we think about this? How do we handle this? What do we do with this? How do we participate? How do we help? How do we give individualized, specialized attention to our children and the children of our community, because we need it? Because our community needs the heart of good fathers. Men, tell me what y'all think about that.
Well, I mean, I just jump in, man. That's powerful for me because, we have 4 boys, and hearing about the parable of the lost coin, and how she searched for it, how she searched for it, and how God places importance on something that's lost is extremely important. I mean, that validates a lot of the feelings that I have as a father. To me, that just says that I'm on the right track, that I'm concerned. I'm extremely concerned, especially in the climate that we find ourselves in. That I'm on the right path, being concerned and seemingly to some people overly concerned about the welfare of my kids, about especially my boys. That's not to say that we're lacking concern for our girls, because we are just as concerned about our girls as well. Right. But just, I mean, that scripture and letting me and kind of painting a picture of how God sees one thing that's lost, or one individual that's lost, and the effort that's put forth to find it, and to make sure that it's okay. He ran to meet him when he saw his son coming from a distance. He said he ran to meet him. Oh, man.
If you were lost, I'm going to be just as diligent to find you.
Because they're too different, right? And it's amazing how different, right? It's like you had the same kids, you grew up in the same house, right? And so this piece, it hit me, right? As I was studying for it, it kind of hit me because, and it's like, well, how does this relate to Father's Day, right? Like, to me, it relates in a very deep way, because what it says to me as I went through it was, we as black men have to even be more diligent as fathers to our children and to our to the community because we have a community.
Each kid has. Each kid has the same value. I came from a situation where I had a daughter, and me and the mother didn't work out, and so now I'm parenting. We're co-parenting, and she ends up getting married, and she has another kid, another daughter, and basically that relationship with her and that guy didn't work out, her husband. So this girl is lost, and she sees me taking care of my daughter, right? To a point where she's telling my daughter, hey, I want your dad to be my dad. And I'll never forget her saying that, at 3 years old,
Right.
3 or 4 years old. And so their birthdays are like 4 days apart. And so all of her life, there's no way I can get my daughter something and not get her something, or be inclusive, you know what I mean? So from her graduations, from kindergarten to 6th grade, to junior high, to high school, to all her little events, although her father was in her life, but she still gravitated to me as well. So I didn't take the role of her father, but I took the role as still a father. And so the response to that is not all what I think about, it's how they respond to me. So every Father's Day, she's coming, she wants to spend it, or it's Christmas, she wants to spend time, and when she comes home from college. So now she just graduated from college. And
Right.
So the same concepts that have gone on is now, it's going in generations. Now I have a granddaughter. And so I'm looking at all of them and how the dynamics, all of them change, and the same concepts still remain the same. I got to find and kiss that one that's lost, and always reel them in and realize that, you are important. You're always going to be thought of. And the reward of that is how they respond as they grow up, how they respond to me, because I'm not trying to solicit you. I'm just trying to be a father and be that person for you.
Man, awesome. Let me ask you guys this question. How do you think, what would be a good way, just for other fathers who are listening, what would be a great way that we could, because in our hearts, I think, and I know you, and I know you brothers well enough to know that your hearts are good and right. And so my question is, how do we help other men to relate to their kids in such a way where not only do they know their kids are valuable, but they show that their kids are valuable, right? How do we parent, how do we father in such a way where when our kids walk away from us, they actually feel built up, right? They feel valuable. What do you think? What do you think? How can we, what's the best way for us to do that? What y'all think?
Well, I think one way we could do that is, just be, just be present, be intentional with your presence. Sometimes we kind of think we're there, but we're not really there. We're there as physically, but we're not there emotionally or spiritually. Some people, like I had, my uncle will often talk about, how he don't say the word love, but he'll punch you in the chest, kind of thing. That lets you know that I love you. But I think today, we have to be a little bit more verbal, a little bit more on point with that, a little bit more intentional, and just model that. You know what I'm saying? As best we can. Just be present. Talk to them, ask them questions, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And that doesn't happen unless you ask questions. And some of those questions lead to other questions. And just the conversations. We got to have conversations with our kids and let them know we're there. I think that's one way to kind of model that, and let them know that, hey, man, you're not here by yourself. I was 17. I was 20. I was 25. You're not the first one to go through these things. You know what I mean? So I just think that's one way to do it.
We hear that term, the last straw, all the time. That's the last straw. People always have that term. I'm sure we hear it from our wives. we hear it from the people who are around us. They say it's the last straw, right? I've been thinking about this a lot lately because, especially with my older one now at college, and obviously I'm not there, and I'm hoping that everything that we did to raise him, he does the right thing. But he experienced a rough year. He joined a fraternity, and one night after a party, one of his fraternity brothers, who he was pretty close to, was a freshman like him, fell out of his bed, broke his neck, and died.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah. And Ronald knew him really well. The police have talked to him about it quite a few times because they want to get his perspective. You know, he had nothing, you know, he's an innocent kid, but, and I call him a kid, he's an innocent young man because he's 18, but he was able to articulate the hurt, the loss, the value. He just saw that kid a few hours earlier. I bring that up because I think about the last straw. And I just figure in this world we're in, especially now, us as brothers and our young men are experiencing enough negativity out there already. And I think when they come home or they're around us, I don't want to be the last straw to break them. I have no idea what they experienced that day. I have no idea who they encountered that day. And I felt good that he felt comfortable enough to tell us about that happening.
Yeah, that's good, man.
It was underage drinking.
Right.
Things happened.
Right.
But the bottom line is that kid's no longer here.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that affects him emotionally. I feel good that we're able to have that conversation. We can talk about it. I'm trying to help him through that process. And he seems like everything's back to normal, but that's changed his life. But the last thing I wanted to do, because I mentioned underage drinking, is hammer him on him drinking underage when he just lost a friend who he knew who died.
Right.
And for all I know, that could have been the last straw to turn him down a spiral, who knows what.
Right.
And I just thank God that I didn't go there. Because again, I don't know if I'm the last straw to discourage him to go a direction that I don't want him to go. So I'll say that to dads, don't be the last straw.
Yeah. That's good, man.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I had a situation where there was some domestic violence going on with the other dad, you know, and he did some jail time, you know, and it was kind of like a last straw situation. It was a newsworthy event, you know, kind of thing. And God had something to do with it, turned the situation around, but it could have been that last straw. And during that time, it's very supportive time that I needed to be, you know, go outside of my normal supportive, encouraging place. And to see the encouragement on her face, you know, continues to move her forward in spite of the circumstances, and, you know, continue to finish school and continue to do things. And now her dad is reunited with her again. But this during the gap period. Sometimes there's always a gap period, and we got to fill in those gaps. You know, when that kid is feeling lost, when that kid is feeling like they need to be encouraged or they need to be uplifted, just to be that person, is to be that listening ear and to be that encouraging, you know, force in their life. It makes all the difference in the world. So definitely.
Yeah. You know, one of the things, man, that, and I'll just add this and then we'll head back to the message and I'm gonna come back to you guys. One of the things that I did, and this is when Rihanna was in college, when she was in New Orleans, you know, at Dillard. I started this thing, and I was trying to figure out, like, how do I stay connected to my daughter, right? Because she's gone, she's in college, you know, and like William is the William is the stay-at-home child. Like William, if William could go to Hercules University, that's what he would do, right? And so Rihanna is my on-the-go child. She likes to be gone, and so my question for her is, you know, or for her had always been, like, how do I stay connected with her? So what I started doing, I got an idea. What I did was I went through a lot of our old pictures and I picked out pictures where it was just me and her. And I would sit down and I would write a whole page and I called them daddy-daughter moments. And so I would put the picture at the top of the page, and then I would write about what was going on in my mind and how I was feeling and thinking about her and what my hopes and dreams were for her and all that kind of stuff. And I would include all of the good fatherly stuff inside of that note, and then I would just send them to her randomly, right? Just out of nowhere, just out of the blue. She would get one, and it would just say "daddy-daughter moment," right? And so, that helped our relationship. It helped us to get closer, and then she really appreciated that, you know, understanding me a little bit better, right? Because as your children get older, your relationship with them has to change at some level, right? Like I'm always daddy, but I can't be daddy at 18, 19, 20 the same way I was daddy at 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so the question becomes, how do you keep the influence, right? Especially when they're exposed to so many different influences. And so that was one of the ways that I found to do it is daddy-daughter moment. So yeah, so that's my contribution to how to do it, and how to help our kids feel special. All right, so listen, I'm gonna go back into the message, and then we'll be right back in just a few minutes. Y'all good? So when we look at each one of these stories, right? When we look at each one of these stories, we're looking at the lost sheep, we're looking at the lost coin, and then we're looking at the lost son. The story ends where Jesus is dealing with this issue of a lost son. Now, this story is particular to today, and is really particular to us and our discussion, because it reveals the relationship between a father and his son. So here's what I want you to see. So if you go back to the text, right? If you go back to the text and you look at somewhere around verse number 18, around verse 17, it says this: but when he came to his senses, right? This is his son had already gone. He had taken his estate, and then he was, he had messed up everything. He had spent all the money and was all, broken and jacked up. But then it says this in verse 17: but when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men have more than enough bread, but I am dying here with hunger, right? Verse 18, I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, and notice what happens. He's not at his father's house yet, but he's having self-talk, and he's telling himself, he says, I'm going to get up and go see my father. And then he says, when I get there, this is what I'm going to say to him. And so he kind of begins this script of what he's rehearsing what he's going to say when he gets back to the house of his dad, right? And so he says, I will get up and go to my father, and we'll say to him, right? So he starts rehearsing. Father, I have sinned against heaven in your sight. No. Father, I have sinned against heaven and your sight. No. Father, no. Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. Yeah, I think that's the one, right? And he's rehearsing, right? And then he goes into verse 19. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me as one of your hired men, right? Just don't even treat me like a son anymore. Just I'm so terrible. I'm bad. I'm all jacked up like daddy. Don't even treat me like a son. And then it says, verse 20, so he got up and came to his father. Then it says this, and I want you to underline this on your handout. It says, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion. Underline that whole piece. But while he was a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, right? Then it says, felt compassion for him, listen, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. Verse 21, and the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. So watch this. So he's not even paying attention to the response of the father. What he's doing is he's rehearsing the lines that he said he would say, right? Because he felt there was such a despondency inside of this guy that he could not even receive the welcome that his father was trying to welcome him back with. And so despite the father was like, oh, my son, he's back. And he runs to him. He hugs him, all this stuff. He's not even paying attention. He just goes into his script. Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. He's just saying his lines. And his father is like, yeah, whatever. And then his father goes into verse 22. But the father said to his slaves, quickly, bring out the best robe and put it on him and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet and bring the fatted calf and kill it and let's eat and let's celebrate, right? So the father is on turn up mode and the son is on please forgive me mode, right? And so here's my question. Listen carefully. Here's my question. Why was the father filled with so much compassion? Why was the father filled with so much compassion? And why was the son filled with so much guilt in the face of seeing and feeling the compassion? See, most of us never look at this. Most of us never understand it from that vantage point. And I'm going to tell you why. Most of us never look at it and understand it from that vantage point because most of us as men and most of us as fathers, we don't do well with handling emotion. We do not do well with handling emotion. And because we don't do well with handling emotion, we often overlook this whole part of the text. Right? And when we do, many times, listen, I can almost guarantee you, our kids have no idea the depth of love that exists for them in the heart of their fathers. They have no idea of the depth of that love and what that means. Right? And so watch this. Here's why the father had so much compassion. Number one, write this down. The heart of a good father is not truly happy until all of his children are okay. It's bottom line. The heart of a good father, listen to me, it's not truly or completely happy until all of his children are okay. Write this down. It is hard to be happier than the unhappiness of any one of your children. Right? Can I get an amen from the daddies? Right? If you're a father and you have more than one children, or you just have one children, you know what I'm talking, one child. You know what I'm talking about. If you can have 10 different children, and if one of your children is unhappy and not doing well in life, and you got other ones who are doctors and lawyers and, doing well, you will be happy for them, but your happiness cuts off at a certain level because you're not happy or satisfied fully until all of your children are doing well. And so for this father in this story, listen, he didn't care. He didn't care where his son was. He didn't care what his son did. He didn't care where his son was coming from. He didn't care how his son looked. All he was excited about was my son is home. My son is safe. My son is good. My son is back. And he was ready to turn up because of the depth of the love that he had been holding in to express to his son. Right? How do you know he'd been holding it in? Because if you go back to the text, remember I had you underline something. And the text says this. The text says in verse number 20, so he got up and came to his father. Now, this is interesting. I wonder why this is even necessary for the text. It says this, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, right? Why didn't it just say, and when his father saw him, he felt compassion, right? It would have conveyed the same message. So why does he put in there, but while he was still a long way off, right? Because the idea that Jesus is trying to convey is that this father had a son that was out there in the world lost. And even though the father had a son that was out there in the world lost, the father still, probably every day, right? He wasn't going to chase him. He wasn't going to chase him back into his foolishness, right? Because the son wanted to be lost. The son was not accidentally lost like the sheep, and the son wasn't lost in the house like the coin. The son wanted to be lost. And so a good father, watch this, a good father knows, even though he loves his children, a good father knows when to stop chasing your child. A good father knows when to not be codependent. A good father knows when to just let your child go and have the experience they need to have, because a good father knows that the same God who blessed you is going to have to be the same God that blesses your child. And every good father knows that your child is going to have to get in some trouble sometime that you can't deliver them out of, because every good father knows that your child needs their own testimony from God, just like you have your own testimony of how God brought you and delivered you. But that doesn't stop the father from going to the edge of his property every single day, looking and wishing and praying and hoping that his son comes down the road. And he never forgot what his son looked like, never forgot how his son walked, never forgot the essence or the aura of his son, so that when he saw this boy coming way over the countryside, a long way off, he was able to look and know, that's my son. That's my son. And before the son could even get to him, the joy inside of the father, he couldn't contain it. And he ran to the boy and welcomed him home, because he was just happy to see him. I'm telling you, the heart of a good father is not happy until all of his children are okay. And I'm going to tell you why. Number two, because every good man has the exact same dream. Everyone. Every good man has the exact same dream. And here's the dream of every good man. All of the brothers that are sitting on this call, all of these brothers, these are good brothers, right? Frank, Ron, Roger, Jay, these are good brothers. And here's what I know. All of us dream the same dream. We all dream the exact same dream. And here's our dream. And fellas, you tell me if I'm wrong. All of us dream the same dream. And the dream we dream is that we want to sit back and enjoy watching all of the people we love take full advantage and thoroughly enjoy everything that we provide for them. And we don't even have to be blessed by everything we provide. I just want to be able to sit back and watch people I love enjoy what I'm able to provide for them. I'm telling you, that is the dream of every good father. And this father was no different, because when he saw his son, listen, he ran to him, grabbed him, welcomed him, didn't even want to hear the apology, told his slaves, go get the robe, put it on him, put the ring on his finger, go get the fatted calf. It's time to turn up. My son is home. And listen, and the sad part is that the son didn't really know the depth of love his father had for him. The father knew the son, but the son didn't really know the father. And so the heart of a good man is not happy until his children are happy. The heart of a good man dreams the same dream as all other good men, that we just want the people we love to sit back and enjoy whatever it is that we're able to provide. And what breaks the heart of a good man is when his children are not safe, and when he cannot provide for them what he wants. Our heart breaks at that moment. When I saw the George Floyd video, my heart broke for several reasons. But one of the main reasons my heart broke was because I can't be happy, not as a father, not as a black father. I can't be happy until I know my children are okay. And when I saw the George Floyd video, I saw my son. I need you to hear me. I saw my son. And when I saw my son, I saw myself. I didn't see myself in that situation. I saw myself having to deal with my son if he were in that situation, or having to deal with the results of seeing my son in that situation. And when I saw that, I recognized I'm not as holy and spiritual as I think I am. And so on Father's Day, right, while we're celebrating, there's multiple families, the Floyd family, the other families, who cannot celebrate the same way today. Because when I saw that video, I saw myself and I saw my son. And what I'm saying is, on Father's Day, a father can't be completely happy until all of his children are okay. So, men, tell me what you think about that perspective. How do you feel it? How do you see it, brother?
That's deep when you put a different face on it, man. When you put your own seed on it, and I think a lot of people, they really don't do that. You know what I'm saying? It's hard for them to do it. It's mind blowing. It's devastating. Yeah, man. That's it's too deep. Way too deep.
It's crazy because when you talk about seeing your son, and I think we all kind of went through that on some level, you know, seeing ourselves, seeing our sons, seeing people we care about. You think about what you talked about earlier. You want your children to be okay. You want them to be protected. But in that moment, when you see them in that moment, you see yourself failing to protect your child. Yeah. You see yourself failing to provide protection for your son, your daughter, family member, friend, and it cuts extremely deep, because that's who we are as fathers. We are protectors. We are providers, and that's both of those hold in hand. I did not provide protection for what God has given me. You know, the thing that I love, the person that I love, or the persons that I love, and so it really attacks that part of you.
Yeah, I always like to use the analogy, man. It's hard to understand the picture when you're inside the frame. You really can't really see it until it actually happens to you. And Jay, we talked about this before, as far as like the numbness. You know, coming from some of the environments when we see death on TV, or he got shot, or somebody in the hood, black, whatever kind of crime. Sometimes there's a numbness, but then when you put your seed on it, and it's your family member, it's a whole different thing. You know what I mean? As a father, seeing your kid like that, that's what the video also showed, is the level of hurt that's on the inside when it's your seed. You know, when it's you that's dealing with this particular pain, or this situation that's occurred to you in your life and it's at home. How would you feel about it? And so the rage part comes out. And so I understand the rage. I understand the rage of other people putting themselves in other people's shoes, because we all felt that. You know, we all still feel it. And so where we go from here is it's going to be on us.
Yeah. And what's crazy about it, they always kind of want to have their input on how we should raise our children. Right. And it's like, me and my wife had a talk one time, and I really had to explain it to her why I'm so hard on my son. And it's because I'm used to having this skin. So if I don't do it, guess what? There's a systematic thing going on that they'll do. They'll take care of the discipline for me if I don't do it. So it's my job to stay on him. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna look tough. It's the same thing my dad did for me. And I was able to, when I got older, to realize and see the big picture of it. But until then, I have to raise my son to be aware of all of these different things, how to act in certain situations and being ready to respond to whatever's going on. You know, sometimes our kids can be a little gullible, and it's our job to teach them.
Interesting dynamic. Being raised in California, you know, the West Coast, they do it sort of, you know, stealth mode in terms of the racism, right? Going to college in Louisiana, there's no stealth about it. It's in your face. I've seen everything besides somebody putting something on my neck, but I've seen a lot of racism. And I remember when we all rallied at Southern to stop David Duke from being governor. And even though somebody can have that history, he had a chance to win. And it made me realize then that they don't value me. And since they don't value me, they can justify what they do to me. And this is well before the kids. This is well before me and Michelle got married. I realized, look, don't matter where I was raised in California, and maybe it was Shangri-La, and we was having a good old life. There are other parts of the country where they just don't value you at all. They're going to let you know. And so I think about the face, because sort of like what, you know, what Pastor was talking about with, you know, with William, my son, the third, is a different hue. He's a lighter skinned kid. And I know how the world works. He doesn't get it. My son Jordan is a much darker skinned kid. And I can see, because he's a bigger kid, he's a very athletic kid. He is, like William, ridiculously sweet. We worry about him making a curfew, which I talked about earlier. But in terms of what he might be doing, he might be helping 5 people make it home that night, because he's that kind of kid. He could be a fireman. He could be a lot of things because he has that kind of heart. And I realize it won't matter. A person in a mood with a preconceived thought process can pull him over. He can say nothing, and they still decide to execute him that night. And that scares the mess out of me as a dad, because I could have done everything right, and my son, somebody's knocking at the door.
Right.
I mean, how do you deal with that?
Right.
That's the scary part.
That's the scary part, bro.
It makes you scary. Exactly.
Yeah.
Very scary.
Like when you're a father, like just being a father, right? Like my daughter, she went to Los Angeles, and like they were hanging people in LA. So like my daughter, she wanted to go to Los Angeles, visit some friends, you know, for a couple of days or whatever. And so she left on Thursday. So I'm like, okay, because you can't live in fear, you know, but at the same time, like I'm a dad, you know what I mean? And like I said, honestly, like I'm not, and you got to understand, like my love for my kids, for my family, I'm not one of those dudes that has reserves in the tank, right? Like I've not held back a piece of me and a piece of my love for my kids. Like if something happens to my kids, something happens to my wife or whatever, like I'm not going to be okay. And I know that, like I'm not going to be okay. And so you know what I mean? So to me, that's a bit scary because I'm a dad, and ultimately, if she's in Los Angeles and something happens, right? I already know there was nothing I could do because she was, you know, in Los Angeles living her life. But I'm telling you right now, I'm going to feel responsible. I know I am. I'm going to feel responsible. Like man, like George Floyd called for his mother, bro. Right? Are you serious? He called for his mom. You know what I mean? And what runs in my head is I get some kind of call about something happening to my kid, right? And I'm not talking about just death, right? I'm also talking about a police brutality situation. You know, where they're being beat up or slammed to the ground or harassed by, you know, I mean, just there's a whole host of things kind of out there to catch our kids. And from the perspective of a father, oh man, listen, bro, I'm I'm not going to be okay because I still feel, even though my kids are older, I still feel that responsibility as a parent and as that protector of my, of my children. I guess my question to you guys is like, what should we do? Like, how do we parent at this time, right? Because this is an unprecedented time. So, and I know some of you have smaller kids or younger kids. I know Jay does. Most of us, our kids are a little bit older, but how should we be parenting? How should we think about parenting even at this time as fathers?
Oh, I just, only thing I can think to do and pray to do is communicate. You
Keep
know,
them aware.
just be like Jay said. That's the word. Just be there, make them aware. And be consistent with it. It might get tired to them, but as I know from a kid, stuff that got tired to me from when I was a kid, as I look back on it, I'm glad that my mom beat it in my head because probably otherwise I wouldn't have gotten it. And some things that I got into that God blessed me to get out of, I probably wouldn't have got out of had I not listened or those things hadn't sunk in. Yeah. So I think just being repetitive with that message of hey man, look, hey, I know you got your boys, I know you, whatever, man, look, this is what it is. This is what it is.
Being very repetitive.
Yeah. This is what
Like, I'm gonna get on your nerves with this message. It was so funny. Even for the anniversary, we went to San Diego, and my dad heard about all the riots that was going on. Do you know my dad was blowing up my phone? Hey, buddy, when you coming home? Buddy, I'm like, Dad, I'm cool, but I had to think about it. It's that father-son thing. No matter how old I get, he still wants to know, like, Jay, get home.
right.
Yeah. It's like, hey, they're gonna get a chance to make their own mistakes, but these are some of the mistakes I made. So I'm not perfect, so I'm not coming at you from a perfect perspective. I'm coming at you a person that's flawed, that makes mistakes and all that stuff that goes along with it, but I'm still doing the best that I can. I'm grateful to still have my father, and so I get a chance to, spend time with him, as he gets older. And he like calls me on the phone if he don't see me, like, a couple weeks or 2 or 3 weeks. And it's cool because, as time moves on, a lot of stuff just really doesn't matter, just the connection. Yep. Is really the only thing that really matters at this point. And so that's a blessing to be able to experience that and to not only have kids, but have grandkids as well. You know what I mean? Because the legacy moves on and continues. Right. And so just to be a part of just whatever the lesson that you teach to your kid or the lesson that you experiences, those experiences don't really have to be explained because the experiences that they have in their heart and how they teach their kids. You know what I mean? So that's the gift. I believe that's a big gift. And I'm grateful to have experienced it.
Another thing I learned over time, kids sometimes have the ability to kind of tune out that voice they consistently hear, the dad, that they'll tune it out. So I always try to make sure there's other people that I talk to, adults, that are kind of saying the same exact thing that I'm saying so they can hear from different angles, because it seems like that's the only way that kids really make that connection. If it's just one parent that's just so repetitive, they go turn the radio station. And that's why the whole saying, it takes a village to raise a kid, I swear it just makes more and more sense as you get older. Like, hey, Roger, I need you to talk to little man, so he can hear the same exact thing. And he's like, oh, okay, well, my dad ain't tripping. Everybody's doing this. This is what we're supposed to be doing as a Black community.
It's funny you brought up it takes a village. It was in my mind.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden I thought about, son, it's going to take a village, and some of those people in the village might be revolutionaries.
Like, kids typically respond to who makes them feel good, but not necessarily who makes them better. Right? And as a parent, right, you kind of have to know that, right? Because we've had to have some conversations and be like, they're not a good fit. You know what I mean? Like that kid, nothing against them. They're just not for you.
Hey, I just wanted to comment on what Pastor was saying about daughters. My daughter told me she wanted to go to Atlanta, and immediately I had this pain in my stomach because I knew that I wasn't going to be there to protect her. When my youngest daughter went off to college at Utah, I couldn't protect her. It's an empty feeling you get, and I just don't know how to solve that. But it's definitely, I mean, I worry about my son too, all my kids, but with my two daughters, they just run a little bit closer to the heart, and I would really hold it against myself if I wasn't there to protect it. So I guess that's the kind of stuff we deal with as men, as fathers, for all our kids. But with me and my daughters, highly protective of them. You know, the guys that they bring over, I'm definitely Xing out they first choices. You know, and I'm letting them know really what really guys are about when they that age, and just be real with your daughters, man. Just talk to them. They're gonna respect that when they get older. Oh yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, man. Love you guys. You know, have a great, happy Father's Day to everybody.
You too, Joe.
Right on, John.
What's up, Jay?
Same to you, brother. Same to you, bro.
Right on, man. Right on. Listen, man, we're about to close it out. And so as we're closing out, thank y'all for joining with me this week. I hope everybody enjoyed hearing your hearts, your points of view. And brothers, listen, happy Father's Day, man. I appreciate y'all, brothers, man. Love y'all.
Happy Father's Day, man.
Yeah,
Y'all.
Happy Father's
Love
Day.
y'all.
man. Happy Father's Day.
Absolutely. Happy
Happy
Father's
Father's
Day.
Day.
God bless y'all, brothers.
God
All right.
bless you. All right.
Peace.
Wakanda forever.
And my brother's keeper.
I am.
All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The heart of a father from the hearts of fathers. All right. So listen, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you being a part of the PFBC live stream. Listen, when you come back next week, we're going to hop right back into our relationship series. I love you, but you get on my nerves. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. It's going to be an absolute blessing next week. For those of you who are listening, won't you join me for a word of prayer? Our God in heaven, we thank you for all of our listeners. We thank you for the fathers. We thank you for the children, the mothers. We thank you for all of those who are a part of this broadcast. Father, I'm asking that you would bless fathers in a mighty and wonderful way today, that they may truly enjoy their Father's Day. Help them to remember that what the heart of good fathers are like, and to take those hearts and emulate them to their families and children. So, Father, have your way with us. We give you all honor, glory, praise, thanks, for you and you alone are worthy. In the mighty name of Jesus, we ask it all and we pray. And everyone said together, amen. Listen, stay tuned for Sister Lashara as she comes with the PFBC's children ministry, The Hive, and I will see you next week. Don't forget, next week is communion, so make sure you have all of your elements, some juice and some bread, so that we can celebrate communion together. All right? God bless you. See you guys next week.